Hello and welcome back to AG Engineering. Today I've got a little bit of a different project that I was following Mr Pete222 Tubalcain, and he did a thing that went over a boring head and allowed you to put a dial gauge on here. He called it a Bore-rite. It was an adaptation of a proper proprietary thing that was available that now isn't. So he did his own version, and it's a really good idea for my application. So I decided to try and make one. Now, if you've been following the channel, I did a timing cover modification, and I'm still working on that presently. I was having a little bit of trouble with my castings, but I kind of got there in the end. I ended up doing an open mould casting of that timing cover thing. This will feature on the video regarding that. But with being open in the mould, I've over poured at the top here, so everything's ended up a lot thicker than being a closed mould. But it's sort of done the job, and that one's probably the first attempt. I'm going to have a go at making some more and trying to a closed mould version. But long story short, that's from that pattern, which is also actually an earlier casting that had blowholes in that I filled and painted to give me another pattern. But while I was doing that casting, I'd made a pattern for the Mr Pete Bore-rite, or a version of it. It's a little bit taller there. I don't know what the thicknesses are. There weren't any dimensions on his thing. It sort of play it by ear a little bit. And from that, I managed to get a very crude casting. Again, with doing it open mould, it's ended up way thicker than its original sort of design there, if that shows up there in the camera. But that's not a problem. We could soon machine that off. Obviously, I'll drop a link to Tubalcain's website, Mr Pete222, but I'm sure anybody following my channel will already have been to Mr Pete's channel. The idea is this bit's sort of just to help you with machining, and it ends up with that drilled out and open here, so it slides over an indicator with an indicator in, slides over your boring head that way and drops down sort of onto there, with a dial indicator through there and a lock-in stem, and it picks up on here. So the idea being, as you move it, you're getting a much better idea of how much you move it across than this original little dial on them with graduations, with a sort of half thou graduations on there that's quite difficult to see. So I want to move that in sort of half the house accurately, and I picked up on eBay the other day a few dial gauges, really cheap, and amongst the little collection there was actually John Bull dial bore gauge that I've already done some work on and got going. But there was this, which is a Swiss compact dial gauge in and it's down to sort of half a thou resolution, but the glass hasn't just popped off. This plastic ring around the edge had actually broken, and for the time being I've glued it together. I don't know if you can see it there. This is the second attempt at gluing. I glued it with some ABS adhesive, and when you go and try and press the face back on, it just springs apart again. It's got to have a new ring there, but it's sort of probably almost unobtainable. I think they stopped making these years ago, and chasing one up, well, we won't even go there. So what I'm going to do at some point in the future, when I've done this bit, is I'm going to make a new ring in aluminium, for this as well, or brass or something to see what I've got in the box. To get this on, you have to strip the gauge from, let me think, you take the hand off and you take this outer chapter ring, graduation ring, whatever you want to call it, you take that out, and then there's 3 screws in there that kind of drops the gubbins out of the body and away from the rack. In fact, I can probably just about get that out without, no, I won't attempt it without bending the needle, but yeah, anyway, take my word, there's 3 screws. So that'll be a separate little side project, whether I video it or not, I don't know. And we'll get that going for use in this Bore-rite. So yeah, I think I said I'll put a link to Mr Pete's original version of this, and I think it'll make a nice little tool. So I'll get this over on the mill, and I probably won't follow his exact way of doing it. We'll get there by some method, because I think he mounted his on a block and drilled through so he could fit that through and various things. This I've got to actually turn this arbor down a little bit. It's actually wider than the body. He did it for a Criterion one. This is just a Indian, Chinese, wherever it's made, imported one, and so there's a little step there. So we'll put this in the mill as well, and we'll put a tool in, a vice or something, and we'll just, it only wants sort of it's probably only a couple of thou or something, just skimming off there, so it's nice and smooth on that, there's no step, and this can slide over it. So yeah, I'm going to face that off and face that off to give me some flat reference surfaces, because this is all wobbly, and then we can set it up that way up and sort of skim this off in parts and get it down to a thickness, and yeah, we'll work through it. So I'll get it set up on the mill in a moment. We'll make a start just roughly to get us a couple of flat surfaces. On we go. Flatter than I was expecting. Another bit. We might take this down quite a bit yet. We'll come back to it. So I just want to establish somewhere to work from to start with. For that bit. And this next part is totally sacrificial. It'll be cut off at the end of the job anyway. Coming a little bit into that radius. And that'll do. I'll turn it over and we can start looking at the other side. I've just set it up on a a parallel and a couple of packers and got it very roughly level to there, and we'll clamp it down at that. Then we can proceed to take some off that surface. With having to take quite a thickness off this to start with, it's not easy to sort of hold. Fortunately, Lyle's decided on putting that little piece on there to give you something to get hold of, which is a really good idea when you're doing your castings. So I'll just roughly get this down to somewhere close, and then I'll clamp it in the middle, and then we'll do the outsides and get it roughed out before we get the hole through it. Or I might get it to thickness before I get the hole through. That's how it goes. So I've got to skim that other side yet as well. Well, I'll do another one or two of these once I've got the mould, the casting sorted out. So Luke, if you're watching, I'll do you one of these. You can have a practice on that new Bridgeport of yours, and see how you get on with making one of these, because it'll come in useful. There we have it, with good lump of material hogged out and got us down to almost thickness. There's a few cavities and things here I've got to clean up when I dress round the outside edge. I'll swap over now and clamp it by the middle, and just get these down to a thickness as well. This is only the rough part of the machining. Now I've got a flat side underneath. I'm just going to do a quick skim across that face just to give me a flat surface to work to. I'm not too worried about this being sloped and having its radius in it anymore, because we're machining it nice and square. After all that machining, all that's done is basically get me down to where I needed to be with a better casting. So there's the importance of getting your patterns right and getting your casting right. It's roughly into shape now, but I have established a somewhere near square face on that side and that side. That's still not truly square to those two yet. I think what I'll do now is get the bore established in it, and I may even consider, I don't know whether to actually bore it on the lathe. I could put it on faceplate, I don't know. I'll have a think about it and how I want to proceed with it. I might do it a little bit different. So I've got some blowhole, some porosity and little holes and things in there anyway, but yeah, it's fairly flat. It doesn't look it in the light, but it's that's just the sort of the machining marks, but it's pretty flat there. So I've got some surfaces to work from, so I'll have a think on the next setup now. Looking at the boring head, the body is actually slightly less diameter than the holder or the adapter. I've just measured it and I'm getting 32 thou. I need to skim that off so that this can go through there once it's got its gap in the front, and slide over that adapter onto the body itself. So I'm just going to take a skim off there. I'm going to take this body off and just drop this down so I can just take a little bit off that. All I'm doing is putting the cut on with the x-axis of the table, and then the feed on with the by raising the table. That's that little bit done. So that's just slightly lower now than the body of the boring bar there. So I can carry on now. I can get a measurement for that thickness, and I know how much I need to make sure my alloy block is down by, which I think is actually okay. Yeah, I'm just about going there, bit of clearance, and I can also work out how much I need to cut out of there. Rather than do this on the mill using the boring head to bore its own body, I've got the boring head off the arbor again, just as a gauge of where I am dimension wise, and I'm going to set this up on a small lathe on a faceplate, as you can see. It's roughly clamped down. I'm going to get a drill hole in there just to get me a centre point, and I've got a piece of paper in the back there underneath it just to give me an indication of when I'm getting close to the faceplate. So I'll just pop a centre point in there, and I'm going to get this set up on the little lathe. There we are with it set up on the lathe and trued up to the centre point. Now to do that, what I've done is this. Just pause you a second. So bring it up a centre to the centre drilling, and then I can align it, and these bolts are just snugged up a little bit, and then I can just tap it down in place until I get it on centre. It's not got to be super accurate for this instance. As I say, once we've established a hole and things, I can just bore it out to the size of the boring head, which I've got here somewhere. We're onto the GoPro for this part, so I can get in. Just on the back of the tailstock, so right where the action is, so to speak. I've got to make sure that I'm clear enough on there of the sticking out bits. My speed is turned right down. Just put a bit of oil on in the bearings. And I'll start her up and dial the speed in very carefully, because this isn't going to be very balanced. It's actually not bad at all. You might see a little bit of wiggling of the camera, a little bit of shake there. Right, I'm not in a rush in any way, shape or form, so we'll just take our time, get a hole established, and then proceed to bore out to size. And now with a slightly bigger drill. The casting's 28mm thick, so it's like that 1.8". Now just creep it up in size here. I think I can go to about probably just under 24mm on the size of the Morse taper, and there's a little bit more room at the back of this on the thread as well. So the boring bar in, I've just touched off. I'm going to go 1 inch deep. I've set up a gauge there, and when I'm 1 inch deep, that'll give me probably about, I think it was about 40 thou or something to the end of the no, it's a bit more than that, isn't it? A few millimeters, probably 120 thou or something to the end, to the face plate. Obviously I don't want to touch the face plate. That's us so far. There's and we're approximately 50mm diameter, so we're at on the boring head, so what are we there, 43 mil, so 7 more mil to go. I'll keep going. It's turning quite nicely actually. I'm turning dry. I'm using my usual AK insert. It's getting a bit of a built up edge there, but we'll swap that over before we do a final finish anyway. As I say, if I can machine dry, I prefer to. We'll probably just put a little bit of lube on for the final finishing passes. I think I've done sufficient. I think I'm there enough to just be able to deburr that now. Right, we'll clean that off and get it off the faceplate. Back onto the Panasonic, and there's the inside of our bored hole. I haven't put a chamfer on there. I'll probably just do that by hand. And the same the other side. As I say, I'm not sure whether I'm going to thin that down a little bit yet. I'll get this off the plate now. There we are. I've just got a little burr, little raised bit on the inside of there just to clean off. As you say, you can really see the porosity in that casting. There's the faceplate, and I got one little slight scratch just there and there. I was working down to a piece of paper that's only a few thou thick. I'll get these cleaned up and back in the holder. I've just watched Mr. Pete's video yet again, and yeah, I see the problem of trying to get the layout right, and why it'd be better on your pattern, as he found. So what I've done is I've put the boring head in with a piece of bar through it to try and square it up. My pattern is nowhere near as good as Mr. Pete's. It was the first attempt at making a pattern ever. With it set in like that, my original lines are a little bit off there. Doesn't show up very well on the camera. So what I'm going to do is use the boring head here as a guide as to where I put my my cutout, by following this sort of down there to give me some reference points. So if I just come down there, go to there, and I cut that out again, just like Mr. Pete, I'll take it over to the bandsaw. That should give me the next stage, and hopefully, if I measure up here, I'll get an idea. I'll do it in metric. I think it's about 35mm. Yeah, I'm only about 25 there. Get an accurate measurement. Anyway, however, I'll do some parallel lines here, and we'll take it over the bandsaw and get rid of this part of it, because I don't think I need it now, unless I wanted to make it a little bit thinner. Even at that I can hold it anyway, so we'll get this cut out. Oh, I have still got the wood blade in here, but it cuts the aluminium fine. It seems to be smoother than the metal blade. closed up a little bit on there. It's pretty much trapped it. This is actually a wood cutting bandsaw that I've slowed down. Yeah. I'll come back to you in a minute when I've got it off the blade. Okay, I'm off the blade, we'll do the next side. There we go. Another bit of aluminium for the remelting. So I'll do a bit of filing on this now and clean it up a bit, and I'll probably dress this up with the grinder a little bit as well. My poor old rough casting, just round these edges off here. And there's probably some little bits extra to take off here as well where my pattern's not so good. So I'll clean it up a bit and then we'll do the next part. There we are with it cut off, cleaned up and fettled a little bit. I've filed some bits off the casting where it was a bit uneven here and there, and removed some of the draft angle and generally tidied it up. I'll probably go again when I've finished. One thing I've noticed since I cut that, when I made the first cut, it actually closed up on the bandsaw blade. I don't know if I've included that in the video or not, but now when I try and fit that, it's too tight. So I've got to it just about wiggles in. If you, yeah, it's a fraction. You could just about work it down like that. So what I thought would spring apart has actually done quite the opposite. It's closed up a bit. So I'll work on that a little bit, and then we'll get that in there and set up for our drilling that way for the gauge, and that way for the clamp, and that way somewhere for the screw. I was thinking about doing some kind of toggle clamp across there. I think I've got some somewhere. Is it worth going to that trouble? Probably not. I think with a little bit of cleaning up, that will stick to Mr. Pete's original plan. That ain't going to be going anywhere. I think I've made that probably half as thick again as the original version of this. But that does fit into my put it on there. That does fit onto my quill quite nicely. Goes over there. So I'll leave the thickness at that. Yeah, so far so good. It's going to be a really useful addition to the boring capability. This is definitely brilliant idea of Mr. Pete's there. So yeah, we'll carry on with that another day, which will probably be the next clip in the video. So see you in a bit.